Hello and welcome back to the how-to for Wargame Airland battle out of the closed beta. This time we will take a closer look to infantry in this game, and therefore we will just go to create a new game. Again, it's private, and create. As you can see, I've created another deck, and this time of course with the focus on infantry. The same as last time, this time we will take Gull as another map available in the beta yet, and let's go! Oh wait, just increase the points to make us able to see more of these units faster. Well, of course, as you can imagine, infantry is quite in danger because there are really risky moments for them, and that's why we will just go parts or step by step, and we just start with the light rifleman. Well, light riflemen in this case equipped with a Humvee to transport them are let's say jack of all trades unit, because they can quite mediocre handle infantry. They are not bad at fighting tanks, and of course they can also fight a little bit helicopters, but of course nothing of this is really well suited for them, and well, they are quite handy in some spaces. They can't be called to be very good against every unit, but that's not what they are made for. They are just to be part of the front line you maybe open. Well, as you can see, this map is more mountainy, and this is a good point for infantry because unlike other units, the infantry could walk over or could march over these forests and foresty mountains. This is only able for infantry. Of course, flying units can fly over these mountains, but tanks can't cross them, and so it could be quite handy, especially in this mid of the map where there's much forest, and usually if there is a tank and your infantry gets close enough, there was a tank. Usually, of course, you shouldn't send your infantry just like I don't want to say new, but you shouldn't send your infantry just into hell because you think, hey, they are able to do everything, because of course they can fight a lot of units, but they are themselves of course not armored, and they are not really capable of handling damage so well. So, well, we arrived at our first troops, this little city, or let's say village, because city is a bit larger usually. And as you can see, our large riflemen fit in this Humvee, which is quite interesting because there are not just 4 people or 3, but who cares? This is not our problem yet. Well, this guy will now walk into the city, and as you maybe know from Wargame European Escalation, it was not so well to place your infantry in cities because they were not able to enter the buildings, and that was not always handy because they saw nothing, and it was just a death trap in the worst case. So this time things are a bit other, or have changed, yes. And as you can see, buildings are heavy cover, and as soon as they enter this area we can already highlight, you will see what happens to them. Well, they have entered the whole with the blue lines mentioned area, and as you can see, maybe they are jumping around like they are teleporting, and there's a reason for, because in Wargame European Escalation it was quite easy to kill infantry, and this time they be able to enter buildings and whole areas. This would decrease the chances to get killed by artillery so fast, which is quite handy. And of course sometimes it's really interesting if they jump around like little magicians and just jump around there, but that's just part of the gameplay, and you shouldn't be worried too much about it, because this of course just works in larger areas, and of course there are just smaller ones like this one, and well, it's not really such huge impact on the game because beaming and such stuff works just in these little areas. Well, Of course, these light riflemen in our Humvees are not that expensive. The highest prices come just from better transporting vehicle. For example, we got our LAAD Red Eyes manpads with Bradleys, and as you can see, they are quite expensive, not because the infantry unit they are carrying is so expensive, just Bradleys are so expensive. Because these Bradleys cost 55 units and the Humvees are at 5. These informations are of course easy to see in decoration and armory, and we will take a look later on these things, but for now this is enough. And as you can see, riflemen or light riflemen do have the Dragoon at anti-tank unit, and the range is 1575 meters. I have to say this is not a really great range, because usual tanks, even the less expensive ones like the M48 A5 US Chrome version, got 1925 meters. Of course, usually infantry can see further than these tanks, but if they got a scout unit and they see you before you can shoot them, well, let's say this is not too good for your infantry. Well, we also got rangers as our scout infantry. You can see this at this symbol, and these guys are very good at hiding, and of course they are very good at find out where the enemy is, as you can see it at the optics. Stealth means they are really hard to find, and the good thing is most of the infantry got these bonus from very good, or at least good, I guess, stealth. No, it's very good even for these guys. This was changed not so far away, not so long ago, well, and that's why it's quite new for most people, and there are plenty who don't know it and don't use infantry that much. But it could happen that the enemy sees your not so stealthy Humvee, and while it's destroyed, the people were able to jump out, and while the guy may think, well, I have killed these incoming infantry vehicles or infantry transport vehicles, the light riflemen or whatever you want to send it are still alive. In general, placing infantry in cities is very handy, and they can of course also be very handy in forests, but usually the cover in forests are not as good as in cities, because they can also jump around in their area, and utterly wouldn't be as good to kill them. We also got our Bradleys with our LAAD Red Eyes, and these guys of course are made to shoot down planes and helicopters. Of course their power against planes is not so good, and of course not against helicopters also, but if you got enough of them, they shoot quite fast for infantry units, and they are really able to shoot down planes. And while it's easier to kill these vehicles of course in the city or in the forest, you can place them just somewhere and no one will know they are there, and while planes fly over there, flop 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 flop, and these flames will go down. But of course HE power, HE power is just 3, and this is not so good if you compare it to... oh, I got no anti-air unit. Well, okay, but let's say there are other anti-air units who actually got way better stats. Well, okay, so far to our light riflemen. The riflemen are a bit better at close range, but they got worse anti-tank abilities, or at least at greater range they are weaker. Then we got the US Marines. As you can see, they are the best, or the best usual infantry the Americans can field. And this is that for the usual infantry. You can see it especially at the M60, where you can see, well, US Marines accuracy 10 and the riflemen at 6. That's the main difference, and yeah, that's it. Well, also we can see it here, accuracy with the M240 is 8, and there are minor differences in the anti-tank abilities and the accuracy, and in special cases in the rate of fire. So well, of course the difference is not that huge, so you can expect all of them to kill tanks in close range and of all of them to shoot at infantry and well bite through them. But of course if we go there through, these riflemen are just light riflemen are just at 25. These riflemen are usually worth just 10 points and the US Marines are at, I guess, 25. But we will take a look at their points later. In general, you could say the more expensive infantry is, or as expensive every unit is, in theory it could be more handy. But of course, even the most expensive unit could be killed easily if you don't know how to handle them. We will take now a look at our Delta Force. And in this case we got Delta Force with Humvees and we got Delta Force with Chinooks. And okay, I guess the Marines are at 20 points because Delta Force is at 25. As we have mentioned. Let's take a look. Yes, they are 20. There you can see the points for the LIV, and US Marines are 20 points, so they are in the same range of the riflemen, but at anti-infantry things they are better, but they got not but they are not able to get Bradley, I guess, as transport option. But well, it's always a point of figure out what you personally want, what you personally would suggest, what you personally like. Well, unlike in Wargame European Escalation, your special forces are not be able to kill whole armies on their self. And maybe you remember it from the old game. Well, you were always able to surround, flank and so on the enemy with your Chinooks and just place your beloved Delta Force in enemy space. This won't work that well now because you can easily send in planes and they will just shoot down the Chinooks and that's it. So this wouldn't work too easy, but they are still quite strong, and against infantry they are still the best. If you compare them, accuracy 12 to in this case 10, and well, the rate of fire is not the best, but it's quite strong against a lot of infantry. And of course it's also handle it could also handle anti-tank abilities, but they are not longer let's say one-man armies. Then we got our assault engineers. There are plenty nations who can actually call in such guys with flammer, or in this case flamethrower, or napalm thrower in this case, and they are quite handy if you handle them right. And we go now to the handling right stuff. In general, you shouldn't send these guys alone, but if you have to advance to a city and you don't know, well, how can I climb there? Because you know there's the enemy, like in this case there's Delta Force, of course these guys will not shoot at our people because we are on the same team, and we will do something special about it. I've called in, well, of course this doesn't work. Jeez. I will try something else. But in general, these guys wouldn't be shot down in their beloved M113 because Delta Force can of course handle these things. And so what can we do to come closer without getting killed meanwhile? And therefore we can use our artillery as soon as it arrives. There is it. And artillery now gets the ability to smoke pass. This means you can just cover the whole place in smoke. While this means you can see the enemy can't see you. And as we have learned, our infantry is not so well with its anti-tank abilities, especially in range. You can, if you want to attack a city and you know there are tanks inside, you can just use your artillery to smoke pass. We see now they are flying the bullets, and in a few seconds the whole area is covered in smoke. Of course, this is not just for infantry, but this is a general information about advancing into cities or fortifications of any type. This works of course also in forests and You will love it if you notice that it's possible, because as you can see, the whole city is in cover, and we will just be able to move into this city without being seen. Of course, this time the Delta Force will be able to see us because they are part of our team, but I will show you this in a later video, or maybe in a shortcut I will implement in this video. Well, what else can I say about infantry? We got these engineers, and I will show you what they are able to. We just take a look there and fire. Oh, no, don't run into this position, just fire at it. Guys, come out. Well, fire position, and we just fire there. If you know there are units, this will happen sometimes to you, you can just call your people to fire there. Of course, you shouldn't stand right next to it, because as you see it in this case, we were quite too close. This works especially if you know, maybe what can we say, maybe you know there are infantry units, and you can just call your artillery units to fire there. But of course in this case this won't work well, because if you look at the aiming circle, well, it could maybe miss the unit if it stands there, and not even close. Well, but there are other abilities of these things, and there are other ways to kill units. You know they are there, but you can't see them yet. But I will show you that later. Especially the M109, which stands down there, is not very accurate, so these things are usually not too handy to kill special units you have discovered. But as you can see, these things are very handy in support rules, especially at smoke pausing. Well, our assault engineers are bored, so let's go over there and burn down this forest. Well, after that I guess we got every unit. The ATGM Dragoon, of course the anti-tank unit, as we can see it at the symbol, got just the Dragoon too, and as our rifleman or our light rifleman got also. So this is nothing special, and you shouldn't think that you couldn't kill every tank at a great range, because especially T-80s and T-64, the most feared enemies yet for pact side, have a way greater range, and trust me, they will see you before you can't even shoot them, and so you have to use some tactics to make your guys not die that fast. Well, if we take a look at these cities, these are not so big because they are just little villages, and so it's quite hard to figure out how could I use my infantry to lure the enemy into a trap. Of course, I guess for forests it's quite obvious. We can just place them close enough at the entry to the forest, like here, and of course everyone will see them. But if we think about the whole situation, and we know there are incoming T-80s, let's say they came from there, where would it be better to place them, there, or there? And I can say if you place them there, and of course they should have a great range, they can just pass by and then they walk there and shoot them into the ass. This could of course work, but usually your units will take their time to aim, and so it could be a problem. In general, you should think always every forest you don't know is an enemy's forest, so always be able to recall your troops who are actually advancing into these forests. But of course, at the beginning of a game you can always think every forest is friendly, but as soon as these first lines have settled, you should always think, especially this forest is an enemy. So just fire it, it's not a problem. You could always hit something, and you don't want to meet enemies if you are already with your Abrams right through this, or right on this road, while there come some friends and throw bombs or anti-tank units or rockets. So if you want to make a trap, this is of course a very handy forest, this also, but most people don't try to drive through. But what's about cities? If we look at this city in special, or this village, you can see there are not that much areas. There are 4 areas as far as I can see, so that's not that much. But if you place your infantry unit there and the tanks came from there, tanks can't even see these guys while they sit there. This means in general they will drive through there because there's no infantry in there. But as soon as they come this road down, your guys will be able to shoot them. Of course the tanks will be able to shoot back, of course, also, but as you could mention, or as you could imagine, then these both are in the same situation, so they get killed, actually both damage each other. Of course, as soon as the guy have driven through and lost some tanks, he will know that you are there, and then your infantry is usually doomed. And of course, you could change always these places very fast. So if you know that there will come tanks, you can place, for example, over there infantry to cover or to decover, to explore the street, and as soon as you see there are incoming tanks, you can just place them somewhere else and then they will go into your trap. That's one way to handle your infantry. And of course it also works if you are in a defensive position and have to smoke your own position. This works also. While your own troops will not be able to, see these guys, the enemy will also not be able to shoot your guys. Well, I guess that's quite much information about infantry. And, well, yes, I guess that's it. You should never underestimate your infantry, because they are quite strong if you handle them right. As I said, not in a too offensive way. You should use your infantry to lure enemies in traps. That's the way they should be played, or in short range situations, because especially against tanks you will not win this. It's just not actually shoot at this position. Well, this shouldn't happen, of course, but let's use the smoke. Yeah, as I said, you shouldn't trust in your long range abilities most of the time, especially as American. There are of course other infantry units who can actually shoot further, but usually, especially as American, take cover, lure him into traps, and that's the way these guys should be played. Other nations do have greater ranges with their anti-tank units, and of course they can actually hit tanks before they are hit. But in general, people will not send their tanks without recon. That means usually these recons will see your infantry quite fast enough for the tanks to shoot back. If people are dumb enough, you can of course use your infantry very well without any traps, but this is usually not the case, because most people learn out of their own mistakes. Well, that's about infantry so far, and well, if you got questions, if you got any information for me which I told, if I told something crappy or something wrong, just let me know, and otherwise let's see the next video.